Hey, what's up everyone? It's Mike Thompson from IGN Insider, and we're here with our video roundtable for Metroid Prime 3's anniversary party. So at the beginning of this week, we put up our article about Metroid Prime 3, and we had an interview with some of the guys from Retro Studios to sort of talk about where the game stands a year after it came out. And so let's start with our own thoughts about how the game has aged and how it stands up today, a little bit over a year after it originally came out. Let's start with you, Matt, because you did the review last year. You gave it 9.5.
I think it still holds up really well, actually. And in fact, I went back and looked at it not too long ago just to see how the controls work.
Yeah.
Still, the controls aren't quite as nice as, say, Medal of Honor Heroes 2 in hindsight now. Still really good. And what I found about Prime 3 is that from just a gameplay mechanic and also a visual standpoint, it's still like the best on the system, right there with Galaxy. And it actually kind of is almost sad in a way that this launch title, 2 years later, is still like, the best you can get on Wii.
Yeah.
So it's kind of unfortunate, but it also is a testament to how awesome that game is and how awesome Retro is. So
yeah.
Awesome.
And I'm supposed to be the dissenting opinion in this whole conversation, but if you're talking about if it still stands up, I mean, yeah, for sure. That game, if you're going to tell someone to buy a Wii, right now, they don't own one yet, that's, we'll go get Metroid. Because there's not a whole lot that you could say has really trumped it. I mean, I'd say get Galaxy first and then get Metroid.
Yeah. But I mean, that's coming from you. That's sort of like a half-baked kind of recommendation anyway, because you don't really like the game. So like, taking it away from just people that only have a Wii.
I'm not sure I even want to sit near you.
I'll switch with you if you want.
Like, speaking to someone that theoretically would have access to all three systems.
Yeah.
Is this a game that you should spend your time playing versus like Gears of War or Mass Effect, or does it compete with the whole spectrum of games that are available on this console generation?
You're asking me specifically?
Yeah, since you don't like the game.
No. Well, I mean, when I'm going to put it in a pantheon of games, I mean, Gears of War I'm not such a huge fan of. I'd rather play Metroid over Gears of War. But there's a lot of games that I would recommend over Metroid Prime 3, especially if you'd played the other two. Should I go into every RPG that's come out? It's just my personal preference.
What was it that you specifically didn't like about it?
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting that you like 2 Echoes over Corruption, because I think the majority of Metroid fans will tell you they either like 1 or they like Corruption. And I think a lot of people really like the original because it was so innovative and fresh at the time.
Yeah.
But most people, almost every Metroid fan I know will not say Echoes. And that'll be their least favorite of the 3.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much I get into the argument of the best in the series and which one I think is better. It's more when you get to a third game in a series and you have options to play games that are the first in the series coming out on other systems. I just tend to shy away from sequels. As much as I'd rather, that's why, you bring up Mass Effect. Well, yeah, go play Mass Effect first. Don't play the third game in a series. And I think, Prime was very cool on Wii because it was on Wii, and that's, you need to have that series come to Wii with the new controls and everything. But, okay, I've done this before. I'd rather play something else.
That brings up a really sort of good point to move to the next issue with Prime, is that it reviewed really well, but like a lot of the reviews seem to be kind of like respectful but still sort of like disinterested. They're like, yeah, great, it's another Metroid Prime game, it's really good, the same as the first two, who cares, get it off the table before like BioShock or Call of Duty 4 or Portal or Episode 2 or Halo 3. Seemed like people were respectful of it but didn't really want to go like very far. I'm talking critically in terms of like our end of the industry, the gaming press. They're like, hey, this is a great game, and it got like a day's worth of press and then sort of evaporated again. Do you think it got a fair shake in the media?
It's hard to compare, and it's one of those kind of hardcore Wii games. Yeah. And you can never really fairly compare them to the next gen systems. Right. Because everyone looks at those graphics like Gears of War or whatever, and Mass Effect 2 looks really nice. Yeah. And Metroid is a beautiful, I would say, in terms of sheer artistry, it's better than almost anything in the industry. Retro's got some of the best artists around. Yeah, absolutely. But technically, they can only do so much on Wii, and therefore, it's just not as exciting to even play a game like Metroid, which I, by the way, would take any day of the week over Mass Effect.
Well, you could actually,
for reasons we can talk about.
You could technically play Metroid Prime 3 between the frame rate issues in Mass Effect. Yeah, you could play Mass Effect, and then when it stalls up, pick it up and go 60 frames per second, then go back to Mass Effect again.
Maybe that's what was throwing you off, that smooth fluidity and polished
He's
experience.
like, my character won't stop moving. I know I get a break.
What's all this visual information? I can't deal with it.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people just weren't as excited. It's a Wii game. And it's the third title in the trilogy. Yeah. And Metroid 2 is a hard sell for a lot of people. The games have never sold amazingly well, even the original, which came out in I think really dazzled a lot of people, myself included. It was a $1 million seller, but it wasn't a 5 million seller.
Yeah. I don't really think that those were really valid complaints either, though, because I mean, you look at something like BioShock, which is visually really impressive. But I mean, there were times in that game where
7-year-old game design or 6-year-old game design.
Well, and there were times in that game too where it's like the pacing wasn't quite as hot as it was in Metroid. We talked about this a little bit earlier too, where it's just like the drive in Metroid. Once you start playing it, you really want to keep going. The immersion factor's there, and I mean, it definitely was in BioShock. BioShock is a creepy, like really moody, very cool game. But I mean, when there were those, everybody's talking about it because the two games came out at the same time. Yeah. It's like Metroid versus BioShock. I think it's a legitimate back and forth.
I think we wrote about that specifically, didn't we, at the time?
We did a grudge match on
which one you should play and which one you shouldn't play. I think pacing is definitely, Metroid, that's what it's known for, the pacing and the sort of like unlocking your abilities as you progress through the game. It's very well paced, sort of like almost as well as the Mario games where you can start playing and not have to be hardcore and know a lot. Right. It drags you through the game without any dull like parts, but you've got to separate that from the aesthetics because it's not in HD. I don't care what anybody says about progressive scan. It's not HD.
Dude, graphics have reached a saturation point. Yeah, we all know.
Miyamoto said himself.
And the aliens in Metroid Prime, they look like they were stunted by the power. Like you can tell what Retro was trying to do, and then you see what you get. And the fact that you can see the edge of their abilities, stunted by the hardware, is really frustrating to me because I would like to see them fully explore what they're trying to present.
But it's frustrating as someone who's like fixated on technology and who's fixated on the notion of polygon count.
Oh yeah, for sure, and I'm definitely fixated by all that
I will
stuff.
agree with you though that for me the appeal of Metroid is exploring the world. I love the design of the world, and it's beautiful in every way and the way it flows together. Yeah. And in 3, you're exploring all these different worlds, which is cool. Yeah, but yeah, I totally agree that some of the character designs of the series as a whole are not that compelling, like the space pirates, whatever.
Well, a lot of the hunters too from the DS version, those were designed as just like hey, we need to make an arena fighter game. Right. So it's like let's get a bunch of other kind of like Samus Aran type characters, get them in there so that you can play as those guys. So when they made an appearance, that was probably the weakest point, as far as I was concerned in Metroid Prime 3. It was just that you got the hunters back, and like they added more polys to what was a really simple like DS design. A lot of those guys, you looked at them on DS and you're like, what is that a hole? Is he fire? What is that? Is he fire out of that? Is that his heart? Is that his face? Like what part is that, But I thought they still did a good job and they weren't really in the way. I mean, once you actually got rolling, it felt just like a regular Metroid, experience. So I thought that was cool. Right. But yeah, some of the character designs could have been a little better. And I mean, we talk about this constantly too, the idea that like if it would have been an HD system. Oh yeah. Imagine what Retro could
turn the industry upside down. They're so damn good.
All right, well, let's start wrapping this thing up here with one last question about Corruption wound up being, I think, the version of Metroid Prime that sold the least amount compared to Echoes and the original one. There was a lot of talk when it came out about Nintendo not supporting as much as it could have in terms of marketing. Looking back a year after it came out, is there anything that you think Nintendo could have done differently to help get the word out more effectively about it or help kind of stick up for it more in the media?
Marketed it.
Yeah, they could have actually advertised it. That would have been good. Like,
they could have advertised it when it was released too, because the commercials I saw on television were way before the game came out. And then when the game hit the shelves, those commercials disappeared. So if you did alert anybody to its presence, they would have been confused as hell as to where this game exists or when you can buy it.
It was really funny too that it had the whole like the Metroid channel came out, and everyone tried to use that to counter. Like we mentioned, we're like Nintendo's dropping the ball, plain and simple. Then that came out, and everyone's like, "See, it's perfectly fine." And that's marketing to the people who, first of all, know how to go to the Wii Shop channel and download that thing, and then secondly, those people are already your market. They already have it. Yeah. What Prime was doing that no other game was doing at that point, aside from maybe like Twilight Princess, was it was bringing in like the hardcore people. It's like, okay, yeah, you're seeing Wii Sports, and either you love it, and that's why you bought a Wii, and you're one of the like millions that have made this thing sold out like everywhere, or you're somebody who's like, I need something deeper and more mature. And when they see that and they see how well the controller works and everything, that's the stuff they got us psyched to the beginning. The original TGS, and there was a trailer and they were showing a guy diving behind his couch and shooting at the shooting at the screen.
Popping like a ball.
Well, in the end they did the We Would Like to Play campaign. They threw Metroid, they copy and pasted Metroid in there, and they're like, we don't want to. You can tell they didn't even want to play it. They're like, we don't want to play this.
Right. They could have taken this opportunity to really, which something they still haven't done, is draw the line and say, okay, we have our casual side, but we have our hardcore side, and we're going to market these things differently and position them differently.
The commercial for that game should have been extremely specialized and should have been really cool and hip and like something that wanted you to buy it. It would compel you to actually buy it as a hardcore player. And they've had that problem. You ask anybody NOA and they'll get really defensive about Metroid 3 because they know they did a crap job of it.
Yeah.
You ask anyone at Retro and they'll tell you off the record, yeah, they did a crap job. Everyone knows,
Right.
And so it's no big secret that they totally dropped the ball on this. And still, I think 700,000 people or so bought the game, which is not bad.
It's almost kind of sad that games don't get remarketed after the release. You know, they have that one shot, and it's like we said at the beginning of this, it's still one of the best games on the system.
Yeah,
it's one of the best games of the generation.
Yeah, and if they rebooted it, certainly they could probably sell another 500,000 with the install base now to market it to people like you like your Wii. Here's awesome space shooter. You don't even need to know what Metroid is, all right, or that it's 3.
Right.
Like best game on the system.
You look at what's coming out this holiday season for hardcore gamers too. It's a total opportunity to remarket it again for someone that's
but that
not
just doesn't
interested
happen.
in Wii Music or Animal Crossing. Put like a bundle out, or Put like
well, I'm still hoping that they're going to do the remake of Metroid 1 and 2 Echoes and package them together with 3 and re-release everything, which it's been rumored for a while.
For $10.
All right. Well, with that tasty rumor tidbit, I think we're going to wrap things up. I want to thank you guys for joining us, and we'll check you out on the next anniversary party.